Hey, my name is Joe,
And I'm Mary Beth.
and this is the best of Gen X.
We are in our 40s.
And we're siblings,
We'll talk about adulting in a world so different from the one we grew up in,
so excuse us while we save a generation.
one episode at a time.
Let's go.
Hey, Joe,
Hey, Mary Beth.
what do you know? What do you say?
What do I know? What do I say? Nothing much. Been a pretty uneventful week for me. I have been binge watching a lot of documentaries, crime type shows, and I got into House Hunters a little bit.
House Hunters, I love that.
Yep.
But I, too, have discovered a new obsession this week.
What's that?
I feel like I've gotten almost nothing done. So let me
Suspense.
Let me start by saying a couple months ago on TikTok, I saw a series of videos of Bill Hader and his sort of little boy crush on Keith Morrison from Dateline. Now, Keith Morrison, as you recall,
Chandler Bing's.
is Matthew Perry's
Perry's
stepfather. So I watched these videos, and they were so cute to watch him just fanboy out and to watch his imitation. Now, you know I love true crime, and it's what I do to relax. Along with plane crash documentaries, I like to watch murder. In our house, we call it murder.
Or Muck Duck.
And yeah, when we have to say it like that. So we categorize everything I watch crime related is murder. And I've tried to listen to true crime podcasts before and just, it was okay, but it's not my thing. I want visuals. I want crime scene
same.
photos.
I've tried and I couldn't get into it.
So it's not that I didn't watch Dateline before this, but Bill Hader's imitation of Keith Morrison was so funny that I started watching it obsessively. But then, about a week ago, I realized that there is a Dateline 24/7 live YouTube channel,
Really?
and I can't stop. Especially when it's Keith Morrison.
Well, you had me at Bill Hader. I love him. He's one of my favorites. Wow, okay. I have to look into that.
Okay, so I love it so much just because I love true crime, like I said, but I love it when it's a nicely crafted narrative. Like I said, I want to see photos. I want interviews. And I also don't want, I won't watch the body cam stuff. I won't watch the reality crime stuff like Cops. That sort of thing is not for me because I want resolution. You know, I want to see the story from start to finish. And so as a true crime enthusiast, I know I can't be the only person who thinks methodically about how to get away with murder.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't make me a psychopath, but it's a fine line because I think if you watch it for enjoyment, you can't help after a while. Based on everything you hear and learn,
It puts thoughts into your head.
You don't, okay. I don't root for the killers.
Yeah. Sorry. Doesn't put thought in your heads about doing it. Just like...
But it starts to feel like a bit of a play-by-play where you find yourself 45 minutes in going, you idiot. If only you had put your cell phone on airplane mode, they wouldn't have, you know what I'm saying? So...
Interesting.
Yeah, so...
A wood chipper on the lake sounds legit.
So it made me think of the topic we're going to be covering today because cell phones they have made getting away with murder virtually impossible. Even when there's no DNA evidence, no forensics evidence to rely on, it seems like more and more I'm seeing crimes being investigated and finally successfully resolved by cell phone towers, where the people really were versus where they said they were, because you get the phone records and you see their location. So it makes it harder and harder. So you can't help but think, how to commit the perfect murder.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
But like I said...
Or as the young kids say, facts. Facts.
So with that in mind, I guess I have to, because of the cell phone, I have to cross becoming a serial killer off my bucket list.
Well, damn.
Dang
Well,
it.
maybe next year.
So today.
Today.
The telephone. What began as a revolutionary replacement for the telegraph, a device that would usher in a newer, better, faster way to communicate and change the world as we knew it, has devolved into a palm-sized piece of machinery so powerful it's turned global citizens, young and old, into a parade of rude, lazy bastards. Yes, today we're talking about the thing you're holding in your hand right now. The thing that puts the world at your fingertips but makes you meaner and dumber in the process. Which is ironic because we call it a smart device. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your cell phone, and we cannot wait to bitch about it together.
Join us.
Yes. So, first of all, we have to remember that we're not just talking about life before and after cell phones. When we look back on what it was like to just have a landline in the house, this was even before answering machines, even before caller ID and call waiting. Those would have come along, right? But we didn't have ways to screen our calls, but yet, did we really need to? Because a phone call used to be a somewhat pleasant experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Something you look forward to almost.
And so I can't help but always reflect back on something Jerry Seinfeld said. I think he was on Oprah plugging one of his movies. And he started talking about our changing attitudes about the phone and communication and how intrusive, I guess, it has become, because he said, most of us can remember a time when the phone would ring in the house and you'd hear someone say, "I'll get it." And now when you get a phone call, it's like, "Who's calling me?" And he's so right.
Go away.
He's so, leave me alone, damn it. And so,
I've never felt like that. What are you talking about? Just joking. We'll get into it.
But we do. We do have that.
Absolutely do.
And this interview I'm talking about was at least a decade ago. So imagine how much more it has changed, you know?
Yeah, this all kind of goes back to one of our first episodes where we talked about the privilege that we have as Gen Xers living in all of these different like eras, you know what I mean? To where we can see technology start from like scratch almost, or at the very infant stages to what it is today. You know what I mean? So it's like we've lived in this era where, like you said, we've been around phones where you might go all day before your home phone would ring. And now we're to the point where, like you said, where we have pocket-sized computers in our pocket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just love how we are in that sort of window of time where we can see something evolve so much as it does.
1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Right, because the people that are, in their 20s, cell phones really all they've known. That's it.
Right.
They
Can you imagine?
They didn't get to experience life before caller ID, before no cords on phones. I can't wait to talk about this.
We're watching it happen to our kids.
Yes.
Which I have to say right now, I've been an epic failure in this department. Everything's much easier in hindsight. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was a completely different world. And I think when you talk about technology, it's not like it started from scratch, but it's like we're talking about the beginnings of groundbreaking, like world-changing technology just in our lifetime. It usually takes several generations or maybe even a century or two for something to become mainstream.
Yep.
And so just in our lifetimes, we've gone from the landline with no answering machine and no caller ID or call waiting to literally can't live without it. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
It's shifted our behavior.
Yeah, so I couldn't help but do a little bit of light Googling.
Okay.
I wanted to see what the interwebs could tell me about the early stages of the telephone, just to make sure I had some basic facts straight. But then I just went into this rabbit hole.
Mary Beth, I'm already on the edge of my seat.
Okay, so I have to give my husband Josh some credit because he works for a nameless internet and cable provider.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
Shouts out to Josh.
And so I was talking about, I'm interested in finding out when did the landline, the household phone, become mainstream? Because growing up, if we were watching Nick at Night or if mom and dad were watching, Leave It to Beaver, or Andy Griffith. They pick up the phone and they go, "Hey, Sarah, connect me to the chief's office." And so you had these switchboards, and I wanted to know like when those kind of became obsolete. And Josh is like, "Oh, about 70s, maybe 80s," and I was like, "Your ass is hanging out."
Yeah, no way.
No way. And he said, "Look up POTS." I go, "What's that?" He said, "Plain old telephone service." I said, "Plain old? You're lying. This is a joke." I looked it up. He is correct.
Of course he was.
Right, because this is what he does, right? So he understands the history of this whole shift. And so I got such a kick out of the fact that up until like the 70s and 80s, there were still like operator systems where people had to rely on switchboards. I just can't even. So I got a kick out of that. And also, I mean, it's really called plain old telephone service. POTS. And so then
Very creative.
another fun fact, I found out that once Alexander Graham Bell invented the phone, well, he's not the first one, but he's the first one who got the patent for it. Once that happened, then this other guy starts to create this operating system, and it's starting to replace the telegraph. And he puts boys in charge. And what I found, like, I cackled, I LOL'd, because this was a problem. Can you imagine why putting a bunch of young boys in charge of being the operators, doing the switchboards, trying to relay phone messages to people? And
well, young boys are idiots, and they're super competitive, and like, don't touch my thing. I'm doing it. I get to do it. That kind of thing. Am I on the right track?
You're kind of on the right track in terms of like young boys are idiots. It turns out that they couldn't behave themselves to like, answer people's calls and connect them properly. And they got too easily distracted. It's like, ooh, look, a squirrel.
Oh, yeah,
and so they would leave people hanging, like they would not make their connections.
Yeah.
And so that's why they ultimately made the shift to mostly young women and women being the operators. So it's not sexist to say it was always, "Hey, Sarah, connect me to the drugstore."
Yeah. No, yeah. No, you're right.
There was a reason
You're right.
that women were put in charge of it.
Yeah. They had ADHD before anybody talked about ADHD.
Right. I thought that was funny.
Well, the switchboard thing is so fascinating to me because, it's so funny to talk about that now. It's like you had that extra layer of process to get to one, to get to wherever you were trying to call to or connect to. So you had that extra layer. But then you think about it, and all of those people like made careers of that. Like people retired from doing that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like one of those jobs that's obsolete now, but you think back, you're like, people actually like had retirement plans for that job. They made a career out of that job.
Well, and I did see some. I didn't write it down, but I did see in that same deep dive I was taking that once the operating system sort of became obsolete and we didn't have to go through that middleman, millions and millions of people were out of work because of it.
Right. Exactly.
Man. Okay, so I thought about landlines and how they were, compared to now, they were kind of like landmines.
Okay.
Pretty risky, but worth it.
I can buy into that.
Do you remember your first phone call?
I don't know if I remember my first.
Like from someone outside the family. I'm not talking about grandma calling you on your birthday, but like first time a friend called you or something or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know that I can necessarily recall the first, but I seem to have a couple instances where I remember being on the phone as a young kid. So it would probably be, the majority of the calls, if I got any back then, were neighborhood friends calling to come out and play because you had to do that, or unless they just rode their bike to your house,
right?
And that was a lot of work. So you pick up the phone. So I do remember some instances of that. And then I remember how, this is going to sound super silly, but I remember how insecure that made me as a young kid because I hadn't hit puberty at that age. So I talked like a young girl when I was little, right? Because you had that voice, that, that transition between young kid and an adult or young adult, whatever. And I remember somebody saying, a parent or someone answered the phone. And I said, is Brent there? And I must have sounded like a young girl. And the mom literally goes, Brent, you have a young girl from your school's on the phone or whatever. And I was like, wait. I was like, time out. No, I'm a boy. Damn it. So I remember, like, I have memories like that. And then I had a friend. Yeah, I have one phone call. I'll be quick, but I have one phone call that I vividly remember. I don't know why I remember this, but I was probably 10 or 11. And my friend Nick, who he and I played basketball at different schools, and we both got put on this all tournament team for this tournament. And I called him. I'll never forget this. I was like, I'm going to call Nick. Or actually, I think he called me. He called me to congratulate me. So we're elementary school kids. He calls me on the landline, and Mom says, you have a call from Nick. And I'm on the couch, and Nick, in his little kid voice, hey, Joe, I just want to call and tell you congratulations on making all tournament team. I said, thanks, man. I want to congratulate you too. Like, I remember that. But that's like one of the very few phone memories I have as a kid.
Yeah. I actually do remember my first phone call from a friend, and I must have been first, second grade at the most. But she lived a few streets over, and I got a call from her. And I obviously don't remember what we talked about. I'm sure it was very, very important.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's very young to have a phone call.
I know. And I was so excited. And the one thing that I do vividly remember about the conversation is that the both of us stopped talking and just got quiet. And I said, I'm so excited to be on the phone with you.
You did say that?
Yes.
You do remember saying that?
And she goes, me too. It was a big deal.
Gosh, yeah. You brought that up earlier about being excited when the phone would ring back then. It was like an event almost. Like, let me make sure I'm dressed properly. And
we weren't connected to the outside world the way we are now.
Very true, yeah.
It was someone entering our domicile.
Yes.
It's like, it was almost as good as someone coming over. It's like someone outside of this home where I'm trapped.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because unless you went to someone's house or rode bikes to someone's house, you didn't get to socialize or talk to them until the next day at school.
Right.
So once you left school at 3:00, you didn't see that person again until 8:00 the next day.
Yeah.
Or talk to them, not see them, but talk to them. So.
And it wasn't really a normal thing to just use the phone as much to talk to your friends.
Exactly. Yeah, you didn't call each other and just sit there and talk for hours
until we were like middle high school.
Correct.
Then you did.
Correct. Because the social stuff was super important then.
Yeah.
It was a status thing.
But in elementary, forget it.
Oh yeah, it was so you're right, it was special.
It was special.
It was special to get something.
But now
it's a treat.
It is not a treat.
It is very anti-treat.
Anti-treat. Yeah, so why was it a risky thing? Why would I call it a landmine? Because there were certain risks involved. And I think that these led to very positive things for our generation. So if you think about it, we had to use a phone book. So we had to learn how to navigate through this very thick, heavy book.
Yeah, we had to be shown how to use it.
We had to be shown how to use it. It was rare, I think, for people to be unlisted at that time. So if you didn't know your friend's dad's name, first name,
mm-hmm.
and maybe it was good enough that you knew the street, but if you didn't know the street, you were taking a hard guess.
Oh, yeah.
And there might be 20 Millers in the phone book.
Oh, yeah, you had
right?
the common last names, yep.
So you not only had to take a risk of wrong numbers, and that was kind of embarrassing when you're young, but it taught us how to speak to adults.
100%.
And adults who were strangers at that. And then it was very exciting once you landed on the right person.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you felt like you won a prize or something. Like, wow, I did it. I got the golden ticket.
If you were initiating a phone call and you didn't have that person's number yet. So we had to do that. It was kind of risky. It wasn't any big deal eventually to like call a business. Like our kids are our oldest, 19.
Mm-hmm. Gonna be.
Okay, so for the longest time, I couldn't get Mallory to order her own pizza.
Oh, no.
No, you have to make their phone calls for them.
No. Yeah, I still get asked, can you help me with this? Can you call this credit card company? Can you talk to these people, these other people? Yeah,
we were thrown to the
wolves. Why is it so
wolves.
awkward? Yeah, I don't understand why
Because
it's so
they
awkward
didn't have to.
Right. When was the last time you looked at a phone book?
I can't remember. I thought of that this morning, and I can't remember.
I think I looked at one in a gas station out in like Du Bois County 12 years ago. I think that was the last time I saw one.
But I feel
that I
like
actually looked in.
Well, I feel like I may have received a phone book recently.
Really? They still make those?
I don't know.
Like, what would be the purpose of them?
Old people with landlines who don't.
Yes. People still have those? Oh, okay. Can we talk about that?
So I don't know the last time I looked in a phone book for something, but I can say that it's been more recent than you would think that I received a phone book. By a few years, I mean. Not recent as in like last year, but fairly recently. So that was a good thing. It was a good thing that it made us able to communicate, especially with adults.
Yeah.
We also had to make plans ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. You had to be a little bit more proactive.
Kids don't know how to do that.
No. You had to be a little bit more proactive.
Like if you wanted to make plans for a Friday night, you would have to talk face to face with your friends at school.
You had to talk about it at school. You had to get that ball rolling.
Yeah. And it's not like you could say, give me a call around 10 o'clock. We'll figure it out. Like they do now.
Right.
Because you wouldn't be home. You didn't know where you were going to be yet, but you wouldn't be home.
Right.
So making plans ahead of time was just natural to us, necessary. Can't do that.
Can't do that.
It's spur of the moment.
There's so many inconveniences that you can mention from back then that we didn't really, I don't necessarily think were inconveniences. It just was the way it was.
It just was the way it was, but it made us better for it.
100%. Yeah, I agree. I think it's, I guess we'll get into it, but I think the way cell phones have turned our lives around in terms of convenience, mental laziness, I think you touched on that a little bit.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah. But listen, I think you're 100% right about force us to talk to adults and learn how to talk to adults, because I used to be like, okay, so I used to be the guy in the neighborhood that if we had a group of 5 or 6 guys that we played with or did sports with, I was always kind of the one that would take the initiative to call everybody to get everybody together. Mm-hmm. I was just that way because I felt like if I didn't do it, nobody else would. Mm-hmm. So I, from a very early stage, had to learn how to talk to parents, moms, dads, because let's be honest, when you called friends, it was very rare that the kids answered the phone.
Right.
So your first line of defense was the parent.
Yeah.
And you knew that. So if I called my buddy that lived 3 streets over, it was always his mom. If I called Brent, it was always his dad. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like you knew who was going to answer that phone. Right. And so I always felt like I needed to prepare myself before I made that call. So I think it taught us at a young age to like prepare yourself for things, be organized in your thoughts. And so the flip side of that, Mary Beth, is we talk about our kids in kind of the goofy ways that they have today. But my son, a week or so ago, we had to call a credit card company to talk to somebody about something. And I let him do it, and I was standing next to him, and I was trying to ask a question. She said I needed to speak to him because he's the account owner. And she said, "How are you doing today?" He goes, "Good." or she said, "Bryson?" And he goes, "Yep." Like, you know what I mean? Like it just, the conversation was so different than what I would have done if I was in his shoes as a kid. So you're 100% right that they have become so used to, texting, and I'm sure we'll talk about that too, but like texting to where they don't have to actually talk to somebody over the phone, that it's just become, they're numb to it. Like they don't know how to even do it. They don't even know how to start it.
Right.
And that's really frustrating for me because I feel like they should know how to talk to people.
Right. But they don't. But they don't. And
they're so reliant on us to do
they
that
get
for
it
them.
Honestly, because what else could we have expected? But if they grew up with these things, it has changed the way everybody communicates, I think. But anyway, I was thinking about how much you had to plan ahead. That included vacations. Like, Mom and Dad had to, I don't know, I guess, call an operator. Can you connect me to some hotels in Jacksonville, Florida?
Yeah, because you don't have a phone book for Jacksonville, Florida? How else would you find that?
Yeah, you'd have to call information or something like that. We obviously, now there's some overlap here. Like we could talk in a separate episode about the internet. we could talk separately about social media. But so there's some overlap in this conversation where it's not just the cell phone, but it's the internet and all those things. But just maps.
Yeah.
Like, does anyone get lost anymore?
How could you?
How could you
I
get
don't
lost?
Understand. When I hear people say I got lost, I don't understand it. I'm like, is this 1982?
I
What are
know.
you talking about? You got lost. You didn't have a big map in your glove box? What are you talking about?
Right. And it's like vacations. I remember there was always a map on the dashboard with a pen. And every stop, Dad would get out the map and mark where we were heading.
And the thing was like as wide as his dashboard of his car. It's like, humongous.
It makes me also think of Tommy Boy when he's.
I don't see any McKeesport.
You're in the wrong state.
Get yourself a new map.
Get yourself a new map. Anyway, so you planning vacations was obviously very different.
Yeah, because I remember back then calling the operator and saying information, please, and then they would transfer you to somebody that could give you information. It's like there's just one person sitting in a cubicle that was the all-knowing information,
Right.
Like the information highway, like contact a motel in Georgia. You know what I mean? Like there was that information connectivity.
Right. And so then at that time, it would have been cool to use the phone, to talk to your friends, to get a phone call, etc. It was a lot easier to prank. Prank calls got harder and harder over the years. Because then what happened with...
Hey, your cat's on my car. I don't have a cat. I don't have a car. Do you remember that prank? Just kidding. Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I do remember that.
I use that one all the time.
So, yeah. Okay. So when you didn't want to talk to someone, at that time, you had to definitely not touch the phone. Stay as far away from the phone as possible. And you also had to make sure that everyone in your household knew that I'm not home, or if so-and-so calls, I'm not here, or I'm asleep, or something, right? So that was ghosting, although at the time we didn't have a name for it, just avoiding. But that got harder and harder when we got caller ID and call waiting, right? Because you had fewer excuses.
Yes. So I think there was probably a point where we all realized that these things were becoming available, and it was like, that's awesome. Oh, but wait.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, you kind of are like, that's great. Oh, crap.
Exactly.
My life just got different.
My life just got very different.
Yeah, you're 100% right. When that came, it was so cool, but then it was like you started assessing and evaluating how that was going to change your life.
Yeah, so we had a small window there, I think, growing up where it was a good time for us to exercise our ability to be honest and to confront things that were unpleasant, like telling someone you weren't interested in going out with them. That was a big one. It's not like we were dodging collection agents. We were dodging people we didn't want to talk to or people we didn't want to go out with, whatever. Or if we were in a fight with someone and didn't want to confront, whatever. So I know that in my own life, that was part of the development of that emotional maturity to say, there is no getting around this. This is not kind to do to someone. But I either have to avoid forever, which I can't do, or I have to face it. And that was, I don't know, I think I learned some lessons along the way. And that was a good thing. But it took a long time, I think, to develop that emotional maturity and be able to tell someone the truth. Like, I don't want to talk to you.
And you're talking specifically the fact that we could see who was calling or we knew who was calling.
Yeah. Like what I'm saying is the harder it got to dodge, to ghost, the more it became apparent to yourself. Like you should have had the self-awareness at that age, middle school, high school, to say, okay, I'm running out of excuses because I know they're calling, or we have an answering machine now, or, whatever. And it's not busy. My phone's not busy because we have call waiting. So you run out of excuses, and then you finally have to confront that with yourself. Like, I've got to be honest with this person. And
Yeah.
how do I?
You can try to avoid a tough situation or a tough phone call for that point in time, but you couldn't get around it. You were going to see that person the next day. You know what I mean? Especially like if you were a classmate or whatever. In the example you gave of a relationship, as a young middle school, high school kid that you wanted to try to avoid, or
Right. I don't wanna go.
with a classmate, but you were going to see them the next day, so
Yeah.
it was inevitable that you were going to run in or interact with this person
Yeah.
anyway.
But then at school, you try to hide from them.
You try to hide from them, but then that made your life even more difficult.
Harder, yeah.
So then you were trying to take
It's-
different routes to classes and go down different hallways and stuff.
They do that today. I think the proper phrasing is keeping them on red.
No, I've never heard that.
I think
Keep
it's
'em on red?
Snapchat.
Keep them on red. Oh, well, that's just like, yeah,
Like-
I think my kids have mentioned that.
Yeah, Mallory talks about it. Like,
Okay. I
So-
think it says it's opened, not red. But like in text messages, like iPhones, it'll say red
There's
if they
that-
have the read receipt.
there's that, which
heard that one too.
I shut mine off because I don't want.
Yeah, I don't even remember if I had mine on or
I
not.
shut mine off because I don't want people to know whether I've read it or not.
That's so funny.
It's,
I don't remember if I've done that or not, to be honest with you.
and so, but Mallory, she has used that phrasing a lot. Like she gets mad if someone keeps her on red, and then she will keep someone on red on purpose so that they know.
Gotcha.
So it's like it's a thing, and it means something.
Okay.
It means
it makes
something to
sense.
them.
Yeah, when you said leave on red, I thought you meant like RED red. I was like, wait.
You know what? Honestly, I don't even know if she's referring to the color.
No. Because I've heard my kids mention it, and she's talking about READ. Like
Okay.
Somebody's read it, they know it,
And they haven't
now
responded.
They have not responded, and so that affects relationships. It affects emotions. It does. It just does a world of hurt to people that age.
Right.
Because they get so I don't know. They get so hurt that somebody would dare not respond to them
And why?
right away.
Why? Because
Why is that?
it's because our phones have made us 100% available 100% of the time.
Yep.
So the point I was trying to make is that with caller ID,
God, make your point already. I'm joking.
caller ID, call waiting made it so much harder to ghost, which was a good and bad thing, I guess.
Get there faster.
But I thought it was funny because I looked up, when caller ID became a thing, call waiting, and I saw two different articles, one from 88,
I was gonna guess.
one from 90,
I was gonna say 90 or 91. I felt like
both from the New York Times, and one of them had to do with caller ID. There was a big stink about privacy. So the argument, I guess, in DC was about, well, the person calling someone should have the right to privacy about their actual number. And then you'd have the other side arguing, well, no, the person receiving the call has a right, just like a peephole in your door, a person has a right to know who is calling them. And so that became an issue. And so they talked about being able to block certain numbers or whatever, but I thought it was interesting that early on, they were like, ooh, caller ID, this is bad, privacy.
okay. So
Because they're having the same issues now with the phone.
let me push back on that a little bit. So why would that have mattered? I wonder. Not push back on you, but just the concept of it. But why would that have mattered if phone books were what they were? Like, yeah, you have a right to, I guess, not divulge your information if you're calling somebody or for them to know who it is, but you're in the phone book most likely. Like unlisted was not very common.
Well, by the time caller ID and call waiting, I think it was.
Okay.
I think it all happened around the same time that it's hard to
Okay.
separate them out. I think they're all tangled together
Yeah.
because once you realize that you can't call someone really anonymously unless you knew the tricks of the phone and star 69 and things like that.
Oh, star 69.
So like you had to think about, do I want this person to have my number?
Yeah.
And
Because I remember you had to actively unlist, right?
Yes.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
when you first said that, I thought, well, hell, if it's in the phone book anyway, what does it matter? Like, why would they have made such a stink about that?
I think this was probably one of the things that pushed, that option for
Okay.
people.
Yeah, I can buy that.
And then another one was even better to me because it was about call waiting and how rude it was. Like Miss Manners was weighing in this article about how rude it was. So you couldn't dare miss a call. And so if someone were on the phone with you and got a beep, you were put on hold, and that's rude. The other person should what? Just be able to call back, right?
Right.
That was the argument a lot of people were making, that we're going down a bad road
Oh my gosh.
because this is so rude. And it kind of is.
Yeah, no,
when
it
you
makes
think
sense
about
now
it.
that you say it. It makes sense now that you say it. I remember. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, even if you were polite about it and said, "Oh, can you hold on one second?"
Yeah.
Because they compared it to like standing around at a cocktail party and you're interacting with another person, but only kind of half there. Someone else enters the room and you're off to another conversation that's better.
Yeah, no, you're right. I can see where that could be portrayed as a negative, but if you finessed it the right way, you could say something like, kind of like what you're getting at. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting another call. I'm getting a beep. Let me just, so they don't keep calling me. I'm interested in what you're saying.
Yeah.
Let me click over and tell them I can't speak right now. And then,
And see, but again, hindsight, we didn't really do it that way.
yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
you're
that it affected the whole culture. And it's even worse now. I mean, I think the people had it right, that this was a road we didn't want to go down.
Yeah, I do kind of remember the first time I heard a call waiting beep, and I thought it was cool and interesting.
I do too, but I remember not knowing what it was.
Right, exactly. Well, that's kind of what I remember too.
We didn't make the phone decisions in our house.
I was
so it's
talking
like,
to somebody and I just heard a beep, or like some kind of beep, like some kind of weird beeping noise. I'm like, what is that? What the heck? Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember when I started to first notice cell phones. I think there's even a scene in Friends when Phoebe's complaining. She's like, "Whose cell phone's going on? That is so rude." She's like, "Oh, it's mine."
Yeah. Gosh, you're so good at that. I don't remember that one.
But because you and I waited tables, I think that's when I first started to notice it. Like, cell phones have been around for a while, and even in school, we saw Zach Morris. That was the first person I knew who had a cell phone.
Yeah, the big clunky.
big clunky.
It was like shaped like a brick almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
With a big antenna on it.
Yeah.
But other than that, I didn't know anyone who had a cell phone. And then the really wealthy people had car phones, and that was a big deal.
Yeah, so that kind of predated the cell phones, right? So the car phone was
Yeah.
quite a little bit, not quite a bit, but a little bit before the cell phones, I
Yeah.
remember. And only a certain subset of the population were able to achieve that status, right?
Well, I think the early cell phone users were the business people. And and I only say that based on our own observations as servers. And so wasn't it always like the man? It would be a guy sitting with a person or two in there for lunch, and they're on the cell phone. And it became such a thing so fast. I remember telling I'm not going over to that table. I will not go over to that table until that person gets off the phone. Like, are you so important that you have to put everybody on hold? Because you couldn't walk up and interrupt their phone conversation.
Yeah, and there was also the element of hearing their conversation in public. I remember.
Yeah, but
And
did you
people
feel?
still-
But did you feel that way? Like when you were a server, like they were on their phone, and did you still walk over and like take their drink order?
Oh yeah, I would have walked over anyway.
I didn't.
I probably would have purposely like made them feel stupid for being on it while I was talking to them. I would have done it in such a way where I would have just kept looking at them until they turned it off or something or stopped using it.
My protest was to not approach.
So just to not approach it at all. Yeah, well.
But yeah, but what were you saying about the?
Well, I remember I used to travel a lot for one of my jobs years ago, and just like and people do that today, so I'm not saying this is like a 15-year ago deal, but I can't stand when people are on their phones in public places, and they speak so loud.
Oh my goodness.
And I think some people, to be fair, don't realize they're speaking that loud in public and during these conversations, but I've been around a couple situations where the dude in this particular airport was wanting people to understand how important he was and how much money he made and what he did. And
Yeah, I think you can tell the difference.
you can tell the difference, but it's so annoying. And I think he even made one of those douchebag comments like, don't you know who I am? Kind of dudes like, you don't want to do that to me. I'm this and I'm that. And
Sure.
me and my travel buddy were like, is this dude really having this conversation right here? There's like,
Oh, you're so important.
Yeah, there's like 50 or 60 people on the gate, so we had to listen to that. And like we were like waiting in line to get to our boarding line. So you couldn't escape. Like there was nowhere you could go.
Right.
You had to like stand there and listen to the guy. And it's like he didn't realize there were 50, 60 people around him.
I think
Or he didn't
people who
care.
live in big cities with subways, I think that's an issue, a very common issue now. I hear about it a lot. But since you don't go to the doctor, you wouldn't know this, but it happens a lot in waiting rooms. And I see more of the people who are just older and don't realize how loud they're being. But they should, at the very least, know that it's kind of rude.
Very rude.
Yeah.
Very rude.
And if I called someone, I would not want to be on speakerphone while
Oh,
they're in
that's
the
even
waiting
worse.
room.
That's even worse.
While they're in the waiting room.
Yeah, that's even worse. And stupid. Because you have no idea what the other person's going to say. You have no control over that. And by the way, I went to the doctor 4 weeks ago. Thank you very much.
Oh, good.
But I will say that I hadn't been in so long that I had to change doctors because I wasn't.
Yeah, you mentioned
I was no longer a patient at my old doctor, so I had to go to another one because I hadn't been in like 5 years.
You mentioned that in an earlier podcast, so I'm glad that you're keeping
Yes.
up with your medical care. Another thing that you'll find in waiting rooms of any sort, waiting rooms, it's hard to find a magazine now because everyone knows everybody's going to sit and be on their phone.
Pointless. Well, so I did see where I don't know if you saw this, but the first cell phone call, did you read about that?
No.
It was in April of 1973.
Get out.
And it was between two rival mobile phone companies.
Really?
So one guy in one company in New York is, they're prototyping this mobile phone, and he gets a call, and he steps away to answer the phone, and it's somebody from Motorola saying, "Hey, John Smith," they knew each other. He said, "I'm actually calling you from a phone without, it's mobile. It's without a cord, blah, 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 whatever." So yeah, April of 1973.
Wow.
So that was very, very early.
Earlier than I thought it would be.
Prototype type stuff,
Yeah. Do you remember your first cell phone?
Yes, can I talk about it?
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Please do.
Yeah, so it's a fun, well, not very funny, but it's pretty funny. So my fraternity in college, so this would have been probably the fall of 98, 99, I don't recall. But we had a Sprint rep was in the general common area by the bookstore, and he had his table set up with the Sprint logo cover, table cover, and he's up there with his brochures, and he's got these.
Oh my gosh! You know what? My head's exploding as you explain this because I recall now that you couldn't just go to the store and buy a cell phone.
Yes, right, exactly. So
God.
A rep came to our campus, and our fraternity at the time, none of us had cell phones, obviously, and so he sold us on a discounted plan, and the plans back then sucked, by the way.
Yes.
They have totally gotten a lot better, but he sold probably 60% of our fraternity their first cell phones. So we all had the same type of phone. They weren't like the big Zach Morris phones, but they were like mini versions of that. They were still thick. They had the little roller dial thing on the side.
Yes.
And they had the real short antenna, thick antenna. But they were through Sprint, and we all had, like, our numbers were, like, one of us had 9060, 9061, 9062, all that. And some people in that group still had that same number.
You're kidding.
No. So that was 25 years ago.
Wow.
But that was my first cell phone, and obviously it was just phone calls only at the time. And you had to buy minutes, I think, if I remember. So going back to the plan sucked.
Yeah.
You had to you had to be careful about how much you used it.
Yeah, I remember
so
that.
You had this convenience in your hand, and it was great, and you could drive and talk to somebody, but you were kind of restricted still.
Yeah, I think I got my first cell phone when I was about 21.
Yeah.
And I think it was a Nokia.
Oh, yeah. That was big.
Yeah.
That was big back then.
And then even then, texting didn't.
I'm going to get into that. by the
Okay,
way.
texting became the norm. And I don't know if I ever told you this, but it was about 2006 because I remember specifically that there was one person in my life who was starting to text, and I was getting so annoyed. It was Dustin, our good buddy Dustin.
Good buddy, Dustin. Yeah, he was part of that group that got that cell phone. with us.
Okay,
Yep.
so he begins to text me instead of call, and I was getting so annoyed because I didn't know how to text back. I did on my phone, and I didn't know what the point was. I'm like, just call. Like, you think my hands are free all the time to just? And so I would call him and be like, dude, don't text me. I can't. And he's like, you've got to start texting, Mary Beth. And so he taught me how to text.
Oh my gosh. I had a similar, that was my story is very similar. So one of the fraternity guys, he was a little bit older, but I will never forget this. I was in my Jeep, and one day my phone buzzed, and words were coming across the screen that weren't just like menu option
Yes.
wording on the phone. like settings or whatever. It was actually like words, like text words, and it had like a question mark. And I was like, "What in?" I remember looking at it, going, "What in the hell is this?"
Exactly.
Like, I know what it says, I can read it, but what in the hell is this?
Exactly.
Like the phrase or the word texting was not. It hadn't been born yet.
Right.
So when I saw these words come in, I go, "What are these words coming through on my phone? What is this message I'm getting on my phone?" Like,
That's
I didn't
exactly how I felt. That's why I called Dustin.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, did you just talk to your
And
phone?
it
What
wasn't,
just happened?
And I don't even remember that the person's name or their phone number that was in my contact list like popped up. It was just a message that came across my screen in words. And I remember, so I did. I looked. I go, "What the hell is this?"
It's a digital pigeon.
Yeah, I go, "What the hell is this?" And I called him, and I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, "What did you just do?" I remember asking, I go, "What did you just do?" He goes,
Exactly.
He goes, "Man, you can message on these phones. You see those buttons that have the letters on it?" He goes, "You can message." I go, "You can?" And so long story short, he kept messaging me, and then I got my bill. And that was back when you got charged like whatever it was, 10 cents or whatever,
Yeah.
a text.
Yeah.
And my bill was super high that month. And I called him because he was the only one that was doing it. And I called him. I go, "Dude, you need to stop sending me those messages." I go, "I'm getting charged every time you do that." I go, "Not only the ones that you send me, but the ones I reply to."
Yeah.
Okay. But that was my introduction to texting.
That's so funny because that was the first reaction I had was, what are these words?
What the hell is this? What the hell
Why
is
didn't
this?
he just call me and ask me this question? That's funny. It just wasn't a thing. Well, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the love-hate relationship we have with cell phones, and then we're going to help you ghost in the digital age.
Oh, let's do it.
Okay. And we're back.
Mary Beth, I think people our age have a love-hate relationship with cell phones.
Absolutely.
I think because the way we grew up, we have experienced what life is like without them. And now we are so dependent on them, and so are our families. I think because of that, there is a love-hate. I don't think the younger generation would have that same love-hate sort of dynamic, but I think we definitely do.
Yeah, and I even would include a little bit of self-loathing because at one point I really thought they were rude.
Yeah, yep.
But I never would have imagined that I've become a slave to them just like everyone else. And so I have plenty of reasons to love and to hate them. What makes you love yourself? Like, what are the reasons you love having a cell phone or a smartphone?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is I love that I can just sort of like text it and forget it. Okay, so,
Yeah.
We kind of live in that world where, okay, I don't really want to speak right now. Just kind of having a blah day. I just want to text. I just want to get my message across to somebody in a text, and I don't want to have to think about it. I just want to send it. I want to forget about it for a minute. If they respond right away, great. If they don't, that's fine too. Even better. So I love that sort of like I can text it, I can forget about it because, when I was growing up, I remember specifically, when you're in middle school or early high school and you're crushing on a girl or a boy,
Yeah.
you have to call their home, right? So I remember one time, I think I was like 15 or whatever, I wanted to ask this girl out, and I knew I had to call her home phone. So I had to look in the phone book, I had to find her dad's name, I had to call their house, and I had to prepare myself mentally because I knew mom or dad was going to answer. And I didn't really know this person very well, but I called, and the dad answered. I asked for the girl, and then he went. I could hear him, shuffling, putting the phone down, like yelling for her to come to the phone.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get out of it.
Right.
Like you are in that position where, your body's getting nervous, you're getting anxious, you're getting sweaty. You're like, okay, a conversation is about to happen whether I like it or not. He's already called for her, so she's there.
It's happening.
She's coming to the phone.
It's
and
happening.
Yeah. So you just get that awkward, sort of anxious, nervous feeling. But whereas today I can just send that text.
Yeah.
And I can just go move on to something else.
Right. It's given us a way to navigate around those kind of anxious conversations.
Which is good. I mean,
It is
you don't have to put yourself in that position if you don't want to.
Yes.
That's one thing I love.
I love being able to watch anything I want while I'm doing other things.
Okay. So like entertainment.
Yeah, that's mostly what I use my cell phone for, is for listening to something or watching something. I rarely watch TV anymore. So I like being able to do that. And there is so much I could watch that it's hard to get through them all. And you can binge watch. So I like being able to multitask.
Yeah, I have news and entertainment on mine, so it's kind of in that same vein where
Yeah.
I feel like I can get stuff that I want to see or read about, or I can get shows or whatever entertains me, whatever's tickling my fancy at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, same.
Yeah, and I love having all my music and all my books. They're not taking up space in my home. They're all in this one device.
Exactly.
That is so convenient. Can you believe, like Savages, we had CDs and they took up room in your car, and then it was so cool that you had the book
I was gonna say not just that, but you had the CD holders.
CD holders.
Oh my goodness.
The CD holders were actually a good development.
Yeah.
Because it saved room, and you had them all in this one big thick binder.
I had this. Well, listen, I had the little square one that zipped up, but it had the flap where you could put on your visor, like
Yes.
above your head.
I did too.
And so I could just reach up, grab it.
Right.
Isn't that so funny? But I've also had a clunky one that almost looked like one of those old credit card machines that you went
Yeah.
people can't see it, but I'm doing the lever thing like on Christmas Vacation where they.
Yeah.
But it was that big. And it had like a handle, and you had to pull it open.
I remember
And it had the
those.
CDs, like it's sitting there in a row. It's kind of clunky, but
It's so crazy that thinking about that now seems like such a racket. And so I'm glad to
yeah,
have it
so
all.
inconvenient.
It
But
is.
okay, so that was a good one. I had I love how multifunctional they are. So it kind of gets to your point a little bit, but it's like your cell phone has become a personal banking app. It has become a personal assistant. It has become a music, playlist, a TV. I mean,
Yeah.
it's become a flashlight.
Yes.
It's become a calculator.
Yes.
So you have a TI-83. You have your dad's flashlight. You have you can bank. You can watch a movie while you do that, and you can listen to music if you want.
Right.
So it's obviously
But now that's all in one hand. The other hand is free to defend yourself when you're lost.
right. You have a map. We talked about the map that was as wide as the dashboard. So I've just named off 7 or 8 things
I
that you can
know.
do on this one device, this pocket-sized device.
That's one thing I was going to mention. One of the things I love is that I don't have to worry about directions. I can just get in the car. I remember having to Google, MapQuest or whatever, and print them out or whatever. But now, does anyone get lost anymore? I remember being a teenager by myself or with friends and getting lost. You'd have to go ask for directions, or getting lost in the country, in the woods, like in the backwoods.
Right. And then, yeah, I mean,
Does anyone get lost?
well, that actually gets to one of my other loves. So I don't want to steal your thunder, but on that note, safety/emergencies, that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
Because in your example, it could be very unsafe, especially for a young person to be lost.
Yeah.
And not have the convenience of the cell phone helping you guide you where you need to be. But if you're in a dark, remote area,
Right.
and you stumble upon some idiot that pedophile or whatever the case is, I mean, it could be unsafe.
Very unsafe.
So yeah, I do love that piece of it as well.
Well, I was going to say, I sort of love it, but I hate what it's done to me, because I could totally survive without my cell phone. I'm not so sure if I could stay in my own element, but throw me into the middle of the woods without a cell phone, I couldn't. I don't know.
Oh yeah, you're dead in 5 seconds.
I would have to follow the North Star home.
Yeah, you're dead in 5 seconds.
Do we even? I feel like we've lost some of the life skills,
Right,
survival skills.
Right.
But I also put that I like reading. I like being able to read on the go. Another thing is I've always been such a curious person, so I love being able to get the answers to any questions at any time in a second.
Yeah.
I love being able to do that.
We're right. You're right on, spot on. Because one of mine was so much info when you need it.
So
you
much
just have it
info.
right there if you need it.
Random, like the ages of actors in our favorite 80s movies.
Right. I talked a little bit about news and entertainment. So newspapers. There's still some people in mom and dad's generation that subscribe to local newspapers, and
Yes.
they get them on the porch and they read them. But you have a newspaper. It's on your phone.
I know.
And I try to tell Dad that. He doesn't want to hear me.
He does not want to hear you.
So.
We did finally get our parents doing online banking, which was
Right.
a big deal.
Right.
Because for the longest
Huge
time,
deal.
Dad was
There was a lot of mistrust and stuff like that.
a lot.
Where's my information going? Who's reading it? Who's
Right.
sharing it? There's all that kind of
And that's still a really,
personal security stuff.
it's real,
It is real. There's identity theft. There's all kinds of stuff.
but we just don't seem to care.
We don't. Yeah.
Our information's being sold, and I like being able to stalk my husband and my child. Do you have Life 360?
Yeah. As soon as my kids started driving. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I honestly,
Sucks for the kids.
they were so upset. I did not expect the backlash. I originally wanted it for the insurance benefit because they knock off a certain percent.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them don't, but some do. And so I was just trying to save a few bucks a month. So they were really, really pissed about it. And I was like, we're not going to stalk you. What are you thinking? Like, this is for, I'm just trying to save money. And if you're in an emergency,
Yeah, it has like crash detection and all that
Sure.
kind of stuff.
but they were just convinced we were going to stalk.
Oh,
we were
listen,
gonna-
I thought I was going to be taken to court over this when I first got Life 360. Like, how dare you invade my privacy?
Right.
You can't do that. I'm like, well, what are you going to do about it?
Right. I was very, we could, that's a whole other episode, the whole
Yeah,
kids.
I wasn't
these-
being taken to court, by the way. I just my
But
kids at the time were like, well, how can you
But
do
I
that?
feel you because the backlash was so strong
Yeah.
in the house.
And I
was like,
kind of, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I've just become so soft in my older age, but I felt bad because I didn't grow up having to do that. Like, I didn't grow up with our parents having to have Life 360 and know exactly where we were, how fast we were going.
Yeah.
It was like we could call them on a landline and say, I'm staying at so-and-so's house, and just do something the complete opposite.
Yes.
They would never know unless just somebody told them.
Right. But on the flip side, I know that kids don't really have those skills or just they have not developed those courtesies.
Mm-hmm.
And so Life 360 for me was like, if you did these things, then I wouldn't need this.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly.
If I could trust you, but this is not what this is about. It wasn't about not trusting them. It was about the
Oh,
discount.
100%.
But I was, again, surprised by the backlash. And one day I hope to have a whole episode to talk about parenting. Sometimes you can't tell who the parent and who the kid is anymore in a household.
Yeah.
But
And
anyway.
I'm sure kids are able to get around the Life 360 location. And
Yeah, they do. That's fine.
like, why isn't your location turned on? Oh, I don't know something. I must have
know.
touched something in the app. Yeah, so
Right.
there's
We
ways
had to
around
deal
it.
with that.
Or they probably like leave their phone in somebody's car and then go do something. Whatever.
Yeah, we had to deal with those things. But honestly, now that it's just Mal and Josh in the house, the three of us, we do like to stalk each other and we're open about it and it's fun.
Right.
So I know that if Josh is picking up dinner, oh yay, he's down the road.
No, you're 100% right. Like, if I need somebody to like take care of the dogs if I'm not home and I can see that, okay, Bryson's almost home.
Right.
Like, I use it for that. And
That's what we use it for, and it's become fun.
And Navy's not so bad with that, with it, but Bryson was always like, why don't you trust me? Why don't you? I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
I trust you, man. It's
Yeah,
not,
like,
I
chill
promise
out.
you, I'm not just like laying down, like looking at where you're going. I
Yeah.
promise I'm not. I know it seems that way.
Yeah, but
I get
we
it.
have more fun with it than
Yeah.
we
I
initially it was a big deal, but I love that I'm almost never caught off guard. So like anybody who knows me personally knows how to get a hold of me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear a knock at the door or the doorbell, I don't even go there. If I'm not expecting you, I will not go to the door. I work from home.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
So I don't like to be
I
bothered.
never thought of it that way.
Really?
No. No, it's interesting. But I feel you. I agree.
But don't you hate having to go to the door and then they're like, "Do you have a security system? We're selling this."
Listen, I'm still the idiot that answers the door, but listen, I'm not afraid to tell them to like go pound sand. But I'm the idiot that answers the door. I'm
door.
like, and I work from home as well, so I'll crack my face in the crack. I'm like, can I help you? And they're like, we would like to talk to you about repaving your driveway or something. Our company's like doing something like, and I listen to it and I tell them to leave.
That's
You're so funny.
You should be take advantage of your phone and just tell yourself, if it's
have
someone
to
who
get that.
knows me, they will call, they will text.
Okay.
Your mom, your dad, your children, they're not going to knock on the door, right?
No, listen, I'm sold. I'm sold.
Okay, good. What else do you love?
I don't know if this is anything that you were thinking about, but I love how it has helped the law enforcement side of things. You know what I mean? Like, we're not talking forensics, obviously, but we're talking about being able to capture and share easily recordings or somebody's picture to try to help in an investigation. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen, because we watch a lot of these murder shows, obviously. And it's like, because kids are using Snapchat, a friend screenshotted a picture of a girl on a bridge, and these two girls end up getting unfortunately murdered, but they couldn't figure out who it was, like the timing of when they were there, when they got captured. But they, a friend screen grabbed a Snapchat picture or whatever, so they knew about the time that the girl was on the. So I mean, it just gets used for for law enforcement purposes, and I really like that because I'm pro, law enforcement. We have family and friends that do it.
Exact same
So
thing.
I like that it helps them do their job. And,
Right, but like I said, we have to take becoming a serial killer off of our bucket list. It makes it so difficult.
FML, fuck my life.
What am I going to do now? All my extra
I guess
time.
I'll stay at my healthcare job.
No, I mean, that's what I was talking about earlier. The cell phone has, in a good way, made it harder and harder to get away with certain crimes. So,
and it's all, I mean, not to take another turn, but it's also helped in the medical field. So I do love that it's helped in the medical field.
how so?
Well, so like this is just one example, but they're able to capture photos for like endoscopies. Is it endoscopies?
Endoscopy.
Endoscopy. Yeah, I'm in the field and I can't remember how to say it. But they use it for like to capture photos of endoscopies for different, whatever brain surgeries or whatever the case is. So they've actually used phones for stuff like that versus using the heavier, more expensive equipment. They'll go to use phones for some.
I don't buy for a second because now you see in any doctor's office you go to, you see a sign at reception, please turn off your cell phone. It interferes with medical. No, it doesn't.
No.
They just don't want people to be on their phones because it's rude, in the waiting room. Like
Yeah, absolutely. But they do use it in the medical field a little bit, so.
Well, that's all the loves that I have off the top of my head. What do you hate about having a cell phone?
I hate that it has contributed to sleep issues.
Word.
So you too, right? I mean, you as well.
Everybody.
Yeah. So I hate it for young kids because as I've gotten older, I feel like sleep is really, really important if you're trying to live somewhat of a healthy lifestyle. But people just get glued to those phones for hours and hours and hours. I mean, I would hate to see screen time data on my kids, but
I know.
My kids especially when they were younger and they had phones and the phones were new for them and their friends had it and they were able to start communicating more. My kids would be up 1, 2 in the morning and had to go to school the next day and wouldn't sleep and they're groggy the next day. And it's just,
you want to know what I tried?
I don't like that it's contributed to that in society.
So it got to a point where our kids were such jerks in the morning. They were zombies. And it made getting them out the door and on the bus so terrible. Cranky. There was drama every morning.
And so it ruins your day.
Right. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah. When they left, it contributed to the shitty part of your day.
Yeah. It was so awful that I finally came up with a solution. They had a phone curfew that sort of lined up with their bedtime curfew, whatever. Mm-hmm. Like you have to be in your bedrooms at this time on a school night. Like these are school nights, at a certain time. I don't care if you're asleep or not, but you got to be in your rooms. And they would have to charge their cell phones in our office.
Okay.
So they had by 10 p.m., finish your conversations, put them in. Now, did they have computers? Did they have iPads? Sure, whatever. I knew that there were ways around it, but they were such dream-eating goblins in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you guys need to get some sleep. You need to get some sleep. And also there were some issues that Josh and I talked about. I said, you got to think about too, they're allowed an intimacy with other people that they're not prepared for. So if you think about it, having someone on FaceTime until 2 a.m. is like having them in your room. Right, and when we're asleep, we don't know what's happening. And so for me, it was also about that. Because the cell phones really did open up kids in that generation, just too young an age. The privacy, they were I said, it's no different than would we approve of them having a boyfriend, girlfriend in their room on a school night until 2 a.m. while we're asleep?
And then in my kids' cases, they would fall asleep on FaceTime.
Yeah.
And I also, as a parent, worried about what my kids would say or communicate via the phone to another person and their family finding out or their parents. I was always worried about that too.
Well, so anyway, that system worked for, we started it right before school started one fall. And it did work for a while. Of course, there was some backlash, but, they got better sleep. But eventually I couldn't fight the battle anymore. But
yep, I get it. What else you got?
Let's see. I feel like I talked earlier about how rude I used to think it was. I think that now we're all rude. I kind of hate that. We've talked about noisy conversations, but also eye contact. There's very little eye contact anymore. There's no notice, no courtesy. Like I'm texting, I'm right down the street. Hey, you mind if I come by and drop whatever. Like
Right.
just common courtesies, and we don't make eye contact as much anymore. I've noticed it a lot in younger kids. We'll have to talk about this sometime in more depth, but I actually did an experiment for 3 years straight with my seniors.
I remember you doing that.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience, and I think maybe we can talk about it when we talk about social media someday. But it was just an experiment. Parents were involved. There were contracts signed where I basically took their phones on a Friday after school, and they didn't get their phones back until the next Friday. They were locked in the office. And I just, one student's experience stood out. He was a baseball player, and it was the weekend that they had a tournament in Jasper or somewhere, or maybe it was a tennis team, I don't know. But he talked about how the entire team is at this restaurant. The waitress comes up to take orders, young girl, real quiet and sweet. And he said, obviously, I didn't have my phone because you had it, right? And he said, but all my teammates had their phones out. And he said, I was so mortified. He said, I was so embarrassed. I felt so bad for this girl. She's there to do her job. She's there to serve us. And not one teammate was willing to look up from their phone and pay attention to her. Like, she's here, ready to take your order, whatever. And he said, it made me realize how rude I am and don't even realize it. So just that in general.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, and I have so many great stories to share about that.
And I personally try to make a conscious effort when I'm out to dinner or when out with people. I try to not have my phone at the dinner table, with a group of people.
Yes.
I've tried to make an effort to do that because I see people and kids especially do that.
Well, it ties into another thing that I don't love,
cringy.
and that's not being able to have anyone's undivided attention, but especially with my daughter. Conversations, whether significant or not, meaningful, important or not, there is always that sound going off, that Snapchat sound. Because you have to snap. I don't even understand Snapchat. That's another conversation. But dang it, it's constant. And you have to snap back these dumb little pictures of what people are doing all day. It's like you can't just walk into your kitchen and make a sandwich. You have to bring everyone you ever met, and even those you didn't meet, into the kitchen with you.
Right.
I've tried watching movies that were special to me, and I want Mallory to watch it with me. And
And they're distracted.
And they're
using their
distracted.
phone.
So I've had to say, can you just not look at your phone the whole time? Like, can we just...
Dude, you're going to miss this.
Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to get people's undivided attention, especially the younger ones.
Can I flip that too?
Yes,
please. I think it has caused negative influence on parenting because parents, when the kids are young, especially, will be on their phone while their kids trying to get their attention. So young kids, little kids. Oh my
gosh.
And so that kind of hurts me too, because at a really young age, a kid is really just wanting love and attention from their parents, and you'll have younger parents sometimes, be on their phone. So it's like the flip side of that.
I recently saw something that captures that exact concept. It was a commercial for something, and it had all of these older couples, like our age and older, but they were asked the question, if you could have anyone over for dinner, alive or dead, who would it be? And so they're all naming, some are saying celebrities, their favorite athlete, historical figures, whatever. Then they take their children, like little kids, in same interview. If you could have dinner with anyone,
Their parents,
mom and dad, grandma and grandpa. And it was like, shatter.
So sweet, but then you see these parents that are not giving their kids the full attention because of the phones. And
and I'm guilty of it too.
And I was too a little bit. So,
what about you? Anything else?
It can be dangerous, especially when you're operating, heavy equipment or driving. I hate that it's become normal for people to text and drive.
I know.
I've tried to get better at that myself because I was really horrible at that.
Oh, really?
Back 15 years ago, I was horrible. I would go to places, I would say in a 20-minute drive, I don't remember 2 minutes of it. That's how bad I was. That's how bad I was with it.
That's the same as an alcoholic driving home.
Yeah, so, I owned up to it, and I tried to get better at it, so I don't do it as much. If I do it, it's super quick, and I constantly try to put my phone down and be like, I can't do that. Or if somebody keeps texting me over and over, I'll wait until I stop, and then I'll call them and be like, I can't text, I'm driving.
Right.
So I try to get better at that, but I hate that part of it.
Yeah.
That people are doing that more and more now. And I drive by people that are doing it. Like almost every car I drive by is texting and driving. And it's scary because when you have young kids out driving, like your own kids, it makes you nervous because you're not always nervous about what your kids are going to do. You're nervous about how other people are going to be driving and stuff. So I don't like that part about it.
I hate how dependent I am on it. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit. Like I said, I could survive. You know those things, you see them on Facebook. For $1 million, could you live off the grid completely, like for a year? It's like, I could do that for the rest of my life.
Right.
I wish I could throw my phone into a lake and just walk away from it. But there's so many reasons that I can't. Like in Mal's early childhood, it was like, I'm co-parenting. If I weren't, I'd have a landline. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, exactly.
But like I said, if I got lost in the wilderness, like, don't tell me east or west. Don't tell me north or south. I will not know what to do, where to
Just
go.
Just walk until you can smell the water.
I'm such a capable person. And
Look at the sun's direction through the trees.
The phone makes me realize how, incapable I am of some things.
Yep. I had that. I don't really appreciate the fact that it's turned people into attention seekers.
Ooh.
Because everything's an opportunity. There's the social media aspect of it, the influencing, the influencers. It's all you hear about today. Which, listen, I don't want to go back to loves, but I do love the fact that cell phones have become income opportunity tools, right? Like, people are making money because of cell phones.
Sure, and here's that overlap, because it's also the internet. It's also social media.
Right, exactly. So I do appreciate that part of it, but good freaking Lord. And if we do a social media episode, we are totally going to talk more about this.
And we are going to talk so much trash.
But it's like, not ever. Listen, I want to like respond to all of it, but I can't. I want to be like, look, 95% of the world's population, or 99%, they're not models. You're not a model. You're never going to be one. Nobody's going to buy whatever you're trying to sell.
Right. We used to be friends, but now you just want to sell me face cream, and I can't take it.
If you're boarding a flight, you don't have to like start dancing to a music video on TikTok in the aisle for everybody to see. Like, don't stop. Like, stop.
It is very strange.
It's very attention seeking. I hate it.
It's very strange. Okay, well, I think we can both agree on this final one. This final hate, being 100% available 100% of the time.
Yes.
And we touched on this a little bit earlier, but there is no escape, okay? Like I said, you can't just go into the kitchen and make yourself a snack. You're bringing everyone with you that you've ever met, and even those you haven't met. So I don't like not having space in our lives for, mental decompression. There's no empty space for creativity, imagination, just to sit and reflect. The phone is attached to us at all times, and it's such a distraction. We used to be able to have empty, silent moments in our lives where I feel like the cell phone keeps.
Yeah, or like if you left your house to go shopping or go to the store, you didn't have to worry about getting a phone call.
Right.
Because you were out of the house, you were gone.
I don't like that people just accept that we're interruptible. Our lives are interruptible, and they're not.
Yeah, it's 24/7 accessibility.
Yeah.
That's actually my last one that I had too, was I feel like because of the cell phones, expectations have shifted. Like people's expectations of you. You better answer. You better respond within a certain amount of time. Why didn't you call in? You have a cell phone. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's so many different expectations.
Right.
Because of it.
And so I think that you and I have a great solution, because when you want to be left alone, or you don't want to talk to someone, we're running out of excuses, because the messengers, the voicemails, the text, the email, you can't escape it. So Joe and I are going to share our list of new and inventive excuses for avoiding people when being honest just won't do.
Allow us to educate.
All right.
Who's first?
I think you should go first.
Okay, now listen. I will say that this is a good one that I've used, but it's also legit. It is a legit excuse, but sometimes it's not. Okay. But you'll never know when it isn't.
Okay.
So because I work from home, I can say I'm on a work call.
Oh, that's a good one.
Okay. But I have used that legitimately probably more than I not used it legitimately. Mm. But it's a good go-to if you need it.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm on a work call because they don't know any better.
Sure. That's a good one. I think I've used that same.
Okay.
I wanted to start with a throwback because this used to be the get out of a date. I was washing my hair.
Oh, my good Lord.
There's always that.
Can I tell a funny story?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll be quick. So we were at a Dairy Queen in town. I was 16, 17 years old. And one of our friends who was kind of a goofy dude, we hung out with him. I'm not sure exactly why, but he was trying to date this girl. And of course, this was before cell phones, obviously. So he was having to use the pay phone, which we never really talked about that. But he was having to use the pay phone or his house phone when he would try to call this girl 3, 4, 5 times a day. And every time he would get a hold of her, she would say she was washing her hair. And we finally sat in the booth one day. He called her on the pay phone in the Dairy Queen. This was after like the 5th time. And we sit down. He goes, how many times can somebody wash their hair in a day? And me and my other friend look at each other like, dude, okay, let's talk.
Oh, poor guy.
Yeah,
wow.
I know, so
I didn't know that actually worked.
It does. Apparently it did.
Okay. All right, your turn.
You know what? My phone was on silent. I'll use that one.
I've used that one, but it's usually true. Because I put my phone on silent a lot randomly and then forget.
Yeah, it was like my phone's on silent. I didn't hear it.
Well, like if I'll put my phone on silent during a meeting, a video call or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I do that.
Yeah.
But there's times when I don't. And
there's times when you don't and you say it.
I didn't hear it.
Okay. I was trying to find Waldo.
Oh, so your excuses are different than mine.
Mine are different.
Yours are more fun and funny. I was trying to find Waldo.
I was inspired by Michael Scott's list that he gave to Pam when he didn't want to talk to David Wallace. And so if you recall, some of them were, he's at an Obama fashion show. He's stuck inside an oil painting.
I gotcha.
So, but you could use these if you're willing to be absurd.
Okay.
Let's
just hear some of yours then, because yours
you go first. If yours might actually be useful.
Yeah, mine are actually like real.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Battery was dead. Couldn't find my charger.
Good one.
I'm in the shower or bathroom.
Now I'm starting to wonder if you're a liar.
No.
These are good.
I wouldn't use these on people like I care about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you just outed yourself.
Yeah. Oh, wait. All right, move that back.
Somebody listening is going to go, hey, wait a minute. He used that on me.
We'll edit it. We'll edit this. No, now you'll never know.
That's funny.
Now you'll never know.
We didn't think this through.
No, we didn't.
Shit. There's gotta be somebody out there listening going, damn it, he's somebody's out there going, I'm trying to get a hold of him for 3 weeks.
Oh.
But we must keep going.
Would you like me to continue?
Yes.
Okay.
Let the people out there know why you won't talk to them.
Are you ready? Hey, for those of you I don't care about. Hey, I was asleep.
I can't. I'm hurting.
Here's my favorite. You ready?
Yes.
Did you get my text? No, I never got it.
Oh my God. Yours are so perfectly basic.
Yeah. And then my last one was, hang on. My last one was, I left my phone in the car or like in another room.
Right.
Hey, when you know damn well that thing was on your lap.
Right. Or where they like someone texts you and then you call them and they don't answer. It's like bullshit, man.
Right. So everyone out there I love and care about, I love you.
I may or may not be telling the truth when I use these excuses.
I love you, I promise.
Oh my gosh, that's
okay. So from now on, I'll start using Waldo, and I'm clipping my dog's toenails or whatever.
Okay, so I was trying to find Waldo. I was watching my pot and it just wouldn't boil.
Oh my God. Yeah. So yours are all goofy ones.
I was stuck in. I'll have to use an accent for this. I was stuck in the Lambeth Road roundabout and just could not get left.
I was cleaning out my fish tank.
Okay, this might actually work. I was waiting for a nuclear reaction to generate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity I needed to get back to the year 2024.
Oh, shit.
Oh my God. Okay. I was anyone who, well, I'll just say it. Okay, I was being detained by the secret police for HOA violations. Anyone who has an HOA should appreciate that one.
Yeah,
Bastards.
HOAs.
They're Nazis. Okay. My carrier pigeon died en route delivering your messages.
Could you imagine if somebody gave you that as an excuse?
My owl, Hedwig, died in a tragic accident.
I mean, what would you even do if somebody told you that?
My horse and buggy got caught in quicksand. Okay, this might be my favorite one. This is my last one. This might be my favorite. I promised the ghost in my attic I'd help her move to the basement. Oh my God.
Wow. I'm actually kind of pissed I didn't come up with some of those because I could have came up with some good ones.
Well, because I told you like what inspired that idea, so I thought we were both coming with.
Yeah, no.
But
I
hey,
getcha.
our listeners will appreciate that they have many to choose from. Some realistic, some absurd.
Be careful when you reach out to me. You'll never know what you're going to get.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
That is
well,
so funny.
hey, it has been life-changing, and I don't know that I'll ever be able to reconcile my love-hate for cell phones. But it's good to vent. It's good to
No.
get some things off my chest.
This has really been good. Okay. This has really been therapeutic for me. I have to touch my phone. I haven't touched it in like an hour and a half. Let me touch it real quick. I'm touching. I'm putting my hands on it. I'm touching
Okay,
it.
we got to get back to our phones.
I got to get back to my ubiquitous iPhone.
We've got to get back. It's been too long without our palm-sized devil.
Okay.
Joe, don't ever call me.
Mary Beth, my phone was on silent.